Alright, so update on the C10. Um, I've been looking out for a 700R4. Haven't had much luck. There's a few on Craigslist. It looks like they go pretty quick because nobody's responding to the ads. So I'm assuming they sold them and didn't bother to delete the ads. Going range for them is between 300 and 500 for a supposedly good one, it seems like, from what I'm seeing on Craigslist. I've got a transmission friend, he's got a transmission shop, and he knew I was looking for one, and he called me, and he has a friend who does LS swaps, and his friend called him and said that he was doing an LS swap on a customer's car, and I guess the guy thought he could reuse his transmission. He had a 700R4, and told him no, he needed to upgrade. He needed to change out to a 4L60. So supposedly this 700R4 had 10,000 miles, and they were wanting to trade it into my transmission friend, for credit towards a 4L60. And who knows who rebuilt it? It wasn't my friend. And so he got it and pulled the pan. He told me he was getting it, how much the guy wanted for it. It was a good deal, if it was in good condition. And he told me he'd pull the pan on it, take a look at it for me, make sure everything looked good on it. And so I thought I had a transmission lined up. He called me and said it was junk. Pan was full of sludge. It would just burn up. So he said it was all black in the pan. I guess the clutches would burn up in it. May have been working, but probably if the guy was doing an LS swap on something, it was probably a cheap rebuild to begin with. And this guy probably did not treat it nicely. If he's doing an LS swap on something, he's probably looking for more power. So it was probably used and abused and about to go. So that fell through. So when that fell through, I kind of took a quick look on Craigslist, and I didn't see anything. So the goal, I think, right now is I'm just going to go ahead and pull this transmission out. It's got to come out anyway. And I think I'm going to tear into it. This thing only has, it's a 350C. Let me back up a little bit. So the rear axle ratio in this thing is like a 278. So if I swap to a 700R4, I'm going to need to change that axle out. Either change the gears in it or just swap another axle. It would be probably easier and cheaper just to get a junkyard axle and put in it. So we're looking at the price of a 700R4 and axle swap or a gear swap. So that's added on. I can get a junkyard axle for about $100, plus the trouble of me going to get it and all that. So say that transmission was going to be $350, so I'm in $450. I'm not going to drive this truck enough, probably. The 700R4 would have been nice, but I'm starting to lean towards, if this 350 transmission is in decent shape inside, I think I'm just going to rebuild it. It's got 10,000 miles on it, even though it's old. It was rebuilt probably 15 years ago, but it's only got 10,000 miles on it. The truck had just under 200,000 miles on it. It was just about to roll over 200,000. I remember that. When the engine started knocking, the transmission was fine, but since we pulled the engine out, we did both, the engine and the transmission. So the engine and transmission on this thing have about 10,000 miles on it. You can see it's got 9,688 right now. So right at 10,000 miles on both of them. The engine runs good. So I think I'm gonna just pull the transmission, tear it apart. If everything looks decent on it, I'm thinking that seal failed and it burned up the clutches, or it started burning up the clutches for reverse. So if that looks good, if everything looks good except for that seal and some of the clutches, I'm just going to get a kit for it. If I don't, I'm trying to decide if I do a converter. Might price out a converter. I'll probably go ahead and swap the converter out. The kit that doesn't include bushings is about 75 bucks. I think it's like 76 or whatever. So if it looks clean inside, like I said, there is some metal flakes. There's not too much metal flakes, but that's why I'm thinking I'll probably go ahead and put a converter in it. It's a lot of trouble not to put one in it. So we're probably talking about maybe about 120 bucks. So for about 200 bucks, plus the cost of fluid, I can probably rebuild this transmission. I doubt any of the bushings or anything like that are bad in it, since it's got 10,000 miles on it. If I need to order bushings, I can order the bushings and stuff, but I'm thinking I won't have to. So, at that, let's get this transmission pulled out, and then I'll go from there, and we'll tear this thing down. I've had a 350 transmission apart twice in my life. Once was this one, and the other one, well, maybe you can say 3 times. The K10, we had to swap the output shafts on it. So I helped rebuild this transmission 15 years ago, maybe even close to 20 years ago. So I don't remember any of it, but I've got a good book, and I think I can do it. So that's going to be the goal, a cheap rebuild on it. So, and at that point, you know, I'm in at 200 bucks on the transmission, or around 200 bucks, and later on down the line, if I'll keep an eye out for a 700 R4. I may even pick up, you know, one that's just a core. I've seen a few of those on Craigslist. You know, what's slipping in third or whatever, 100 bucks. So if nothing else, you know, I could pick up a 700 R4 for 100 bucks, and after rebuilding this, you use that knowledge towards rebuilding a 700 R4, and then I would know I have a good one. So that's probably the wisest thing to do right now. Just get this thing back on the road with 350 in it, and then later on down the road, if I want to, I can put a 700 R4 and change the rear axle out. So it's making sense to me. So we're gonna go that way, unless I see, you know, if I get this thing apart and, you know, something came apart and the case is bad, then we'll go a different route. But if all the hard parts look okay in here, and we can get by with just doing clutches and stuff like that, I think that's the way we're going to go. And I do have some spare hard parts, and I do have a spare 350 transmission. So if, you know, I could always tear one of those down and pull some stuff out. Neither one of those transmissions are good. I think it's just clutches and stuff that are bad in those. So anyway, I'm rambling. Like I said, just an update. Next video will be pulling the transmission on this truck. Thanks for watching.